Okay, so today we're going to look at Lexi without her owner riding, and this is more typical of a groundwork session I would do with Lexi just for training. And instead of riding Lexi, I find that she makes a little bit faster progress in her physical development when I use a halter instead of a bridle, because she has a long, strong history of over curling her neck forward and down when she drops her back. She's over 20, her back has been tight for a long time, and her hindquarters are just gaining strength. So I typically will start her out on sort of a larger circle. And she's been an anxious horse that was too far forward, she's been on the side of anxiety and rushing with too much forward, to the point that Marianne, she was a little bit unpredictable, unsafe to ride when we started. She's obviously changed from that, but her tendency to be more forward rather than too slow, which is sort of the opposite of Hercules, means that using the trot work as the initial warm-up to help a horse sort of spend a little bit of that anxiety, spend a little bit of pent-up energy, and warm up physically in the trot before I ask for more engagement by walking on the small circles. So this is kind of how I started a while ago with Rafalco, who also used to be too forward and also used to overcurl his neck every time he dropped his back and disengaged his hindquarters. And she really doesn't have a lot of pent-up energy today, so I'm just kind of checking her out at the trot. She's even a little on the slow side at the trot, so I'm just going to give her a few minutes to just gently warm up her body. The trot can be a lot easier gait for horses, especially for warm-up, compared to the walk. In the walk, when they balance, when they engage more, when they lift the back muscles have to work a lot harder than when they gain the same balance and coordination in the trot. So in the trot, the legs do more of the work and the back muscles do less. In the walk, the back muscles do more of the work and the legs do less. So with horses that like going forward, that are sometimes too forward, sort of letting them start off a warm-up with just an easy, imperfect, sort of big trot circle. It can still be on the long reins, but the trot is not only a way to kind of spend extra energy getting her calm and in the right frame of mind before we do the harder work, it's also physically easier for her to trot instead of work at the walk in the same balance. So that's good. Like I said, she doesn't look like she needs much trot work this morning. Sometimes it's a little, sometimes it's a lot. The next time she walks, I'll just change direction and let her have a little bit of trot in the other direction. So the things that make it easier on a horse, less work, less taxing on their balance and coordination, is if the circle is imperfect instead of precise, and if the circle is bigger rather than smaller. So with Lexi, where engagement and lifting back has been really a big challenge, we had to spend some time in long and low just letting years of sort of habitual contraction start to let go. And she did a lot more work at the walk in that period of time. Right? Now that she sort of even seeks long and low at the trot, easy to get into long and low, riding or at the walk, the small circles are bumping up her balance a little bit, by requiring more engagement, more use of the back and hindquarter muscles in order to shift her from the posture of long and low to something that's more like basic balance, kind of a long and level, but more importantly, alleviating weight distribution to the front legs. So they use their back muscles and engagement as a means to resist their body weight from overloading their front legs internally. That's the whole point of lifting the back, engaging the hindquarters to the most minimal level. It's the very beginning of self-carriage, because they're not constantly concussing their front legs by having too much weight on it, which they can during long and low. If they're in the posture of extension, they're also concussing the front legs massively. It's just that we don't see it as obviously as the posture of long and low, because they're shortening all the top line muscles and holding through the neck as a way to sort of stabilize with a boatload of weight on their front legs. So as long as the horse is either in the posture of extension in some version, or too long in the posture of long and low, then, or any time in the posture of long and low. So extension and long and low both mean, and that's why they're temporary postures, because it means there's too much weight on those front legs. And if we don't increase spinal flexion upward, increase engagement and stability of the hindquarters, then with every step that they push forward, they push their own body weight too much onto their front legs. And it's not a matter of just lifting up the head and neck or resisting with the reins. It's a complicated system that's really balancing the use of the back and hindquarter muscles, balancing the use of the hind legs. Oh, I wanted to change direction, sorry. Until she's strong enough to not only push forward, being self-propelled, but also managing the forces of forward motion and her own body weight by having enough self-control and stability through her back and hindquarter that she lightens the load, relaxes the neck, and lightens the load on the front legs. And I'm trying to get in the shade here without getting too close to the camera. I'm gonna have to move. So after her little trot warm-up, that's always our check-in. She's obviously in the right frame of mind. She's calm, she's stable. She's not blasting into canter, bucking, trotting frantically, getting distracted. So that little quick check-in at trot tells me she's in the right frame of mind. The little bit of time I took at the trot just sort of let her ease into the work muscularly without so much trot that she gets tired, right? Just a gentle warm-up. Then this is the work, and when we did it with Marianne on her back, it sort of made it easier to see Lexi's challenges through the back and the hindquarter. So we're just going to look today at kind of a quick, maybe 5 to 10 minutes of the warm-up on one direction and 5 to 10 minutes the other direction. And already without a rider on her back, Lexi is a little more forward. She doesn't halt as often. That's what I mean by that. And she's not as sort of severely bent to the outside with her neck. She may be a little more when she tracks left compared to right, but with Marianne on her, any rider, not specifically Marianne, but with any rider on her, Lexi struggles a little bit more to find the same balance if she has a bit in her mouth, because that acts like an old trigger, and if she has a rider on board. And I suspect because she's just beginning to build the back muscle she needs, it's harder to use the muscles and the skeleton correctly when she has weight on her back. She can do it, it just, her frequency of halts, her struggle, the outside bend, there's lots of signs that just tell me it's harder for her to do it that way than it is for her to do it this way. And so progress is always faster. The horses develop faster when we seek out the path of least resistance for change. So like Hercules, Lexi and Hercules struggle more with the weight of the rider than they do without a rider. So doing more sessions of groundwork with them per week and keeping the riding sort of minimal. So you're working on it, you're checking in with it, you're not ignoring it, but the progress is faster through the groundwork. So Lexi and Hercules spend more time, more sessions doing groundwork, fewer sessions being ridden. And Rafalco was sort of the opposite. He made most of his progress with a rider on, and he's only learning to kind of hold those changes when I do groundwork, even with supportive groundwork. So I ride Rafalco more than I ride Lexi and Hercs because that's easier for Rafalco. But I do a little bit of both with all the horses, some groundwork, some riding. It's just the ratio of time that I change. Because ultimately we need both, but I'm always looking for the path of least resistance to restoring the health of the body, which is the balance and the muscling, as well as getting the new habit of better movement really ingrained in the nervous system. So every step counts. Like our aids are really resisting the steps or the moments of imbalance, and the aids get lighter and less frequent because the horse is holding their balance, right? So when my aids get heavy and frequent, if it's under saddle, then I know it's not as easy for the horse under saddle. If they're lighter and less frequent during groundwork, then I know the groundwork is easier for the horse. So I'm not going to avoid doing both, but I'm going to spend more time because every step is building a new habit in the nervous system towards better and better movement. So if I sort of think of every step counts, then the more steps with fewer aids, lighter aids, the more the horse is integrating these changes into their own nervous system because they're holding it more than I'm having to guide it or resist the mistakes and the errors. So that's just, and in this sort of series of videos after the introduction of each horse, I'm sort of purposefully showing the warm-up side of the work. It's pretty boring to watch for a full hour, and that video would take forever to upload. So in this sort of series of videos, we're looking at where the horse is starting, which is where the balance is usually the worst in every session. And then I think the next series of videos I'll try to show maybe the last 20 minutes of a normal session so we can see where the horse is ending, which is the progress for the day that we've made so far, right? If there's no big outside environmental influences that create a change. Okay, so I'm just going to do a little bit to the left. And what we're looking at is just her initial speed, balance, way of going, posture, all those different factors. We're just sort of looking at how she starts out, right? And then that tells me if it's kind of a big struggle, but I see some of the changes that I'm looking for, a step here and there, even a moment here and there, or sort of a change in the right direction, then I know what I'm choosing for the warm-up or the strategy I'm working on is going to be beneficial and useful. If I don't see any change at all from the warm-up phase through the middle of my session, I need to really rethink what my training strategy is. If find a way to make it easier for the horse to change, not harder. And that kind of goes against our human instinct, but it works very well with horses. If we're always seeking the improvement or stabilizing the improvement with lighter aids, fewer aids, making sure that the horse is really holding those changes more and more with less guidance from us. Right? The guidance is necessary. I'm not saying it's not necessary. And even if it's heavy, it's sometimes necessary to get the change. But it's like as Lexi is going around this circle, when Marianne is on her back, the corrections on the reins are twice as heavy as when Marianne's not on her back. Lexi's a little bit more forward, has her neck a little bit visually straighter, which means her hindquarters are more stable. Her back is more stable. That's why they straighten out the neck in this exercise. So all of that coming together faster and easier for her and for me is why I do this with her in a training session. And then when Marianne rides her, she can feel the difference because the coordination and the muscles have a better chance of developing further if Lexi is struggling less and holding these changes more and more on her own. And that's true across the board. So whenever we feel like we have to push or force a horse or use more leverage, and it's not a judgment. I have been there, I have done that. I made every mistake that every horse owner, trainer, rider has probably made. And you just learn from your mistakes. But instead of blaming the horse, I learned the most by accepting the horse the way the horse is today. This is what we have to work with. How do we move forward from here, right? And when I went through phases of using heavy aids, pushing the horse, manipulating the horse's posture or frame, or using a lot of leverage, invariably it backfired, because if the horse wasn't comfortable and properly prepared for the next evolution in their balance, then they just found a trickier, sneakier, more complicated way to compensate in order to do what I asked, but never found balance. And that's the hard part with horses, is they're masterful at compensating, right? Because any deviation of movement is going to attract the eye of a predator. So that natural ability for horses to mask bad movement is part of the problem in our whole training industry. It's hard to get it right. It's easy to get it wrong. And one of the ways I know I'm getting it right, even if it's slow, is because the horse cooperates more and more. The feel of the ride gets better. The aids get lighter and less frequent. And I actually experience self-carriage, not in a theoretical way, in a very direct, practical way. The horse learns to carry themselves, right? And the horse has to learn the same set of skills in order to have self-carriage with the weight of a rider. Requires a stronger habit of balance, more muscular development, and has more benefit if it's actually mechanically accurate for how their body is intended to balance and function. Then riding only enhances the horse's balance. But if we ride at the expense of our horse's balance, we can be the source of the problem. And again, I got no judgment. We've all been the source of the problem, and my little gray mare, Prima, will tell you all about it. She's been with me for 30 years. She knows my entire learning curve. She got to experience firsthand, that poor mare. And that's part of, she was always very clear with her opinion, even though she was kind. And Prima really became a test, sort of a laboratory of different ideas and theories, because if it worked with her, it worked pretty well across the board. And if it didn't work with her, it might work for some horses, but there was a flaw in the theory somewhere. So Prima has been my most important mentor for the past 30 years, with human mentors coming and going. But Prima's been very reliable and consistent. And when I listen to her, she's never steered me wrong. She tells me when my idea is bad. She tells me when I'm sort of on the right track. She tells me when I'm doing a great job and when it's working. And so our horse and the response our horse offers, the feel of the movement, where we tend to be pretty quick to write it off to personality or conformation or breed, I think we sell our experience very short. I think we quit learning as soon as we opt out with one of those excuses, instead of sort of believing that every horse, because they have the same skeleton, can balance, even with genetic anomalies. And that every horse shares the same instinct and has to sort of learn how to override that instinct in the human environment and feel safe with humans as part of a herd. And so those are learned things for any domestic horse, and all horses can do it because they all share the same instincts and the same anatomy. So if I start with that premise, to me the interesting part, which used to be the frustrating part, is how do I help this unique individual start to find the learning frame of mind, a higher use of the mind, and start to find more optimal coordination of the body and motion, right? A higher degree of balance than they would ever need in nature. And to me, that's what I have to offer horses in this relationship. If I can make them more comfortable and feel safer and stronger and move better than they could figure out on their own, then I've offered them a benefit in my relationship with them. So the benefit doesn't have to be all one-sided. Okay, so I'm going to stop the video there. I'm kind of rambling off on a tangent. But that's Lexi's warm-up, typically, on the long reins. And then if she doesn't start halting a lot, if she halts a lot, then I know she's fatigued from the small circle. I could go back on the big circle, trot a little bit, come back to the small circle. But as long as she's maintaining a walk, even if it's slow, without halting a lot, then she's comfortable enough that we can continue building the muscles related to more engagement and really starting to build the back muscles as she's slowly starting to increase spinal flexion. And that's it.